Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking to Heloiza Correa, who is running for Circuit Court Judge. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So one of the things that when you get to be old enough, you remember when it started switching from male-dominated seats to women being involved. And in the beginning, and maybe even still now, it was a little bit harder for the women to say, hey, I want a seat at the table. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you decided to go into law and why you want a seat at the judge's table?
Well, I mean, thankfully in Miami-Dade County, we are now at a point where it's a little bit over 50% women judges, believe it or not. So yes, it is a very diverse bench. But I started getting into law when I was in my civics class. The teacher showed us a Law and Order episode. And after I watched that Law and Order episode, I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to become a lawyer. So I knew very early on in life what I wanted to do.
Did you say high school? High school?
No,
College? This
was in middle school, civics.
Middle school.
Yes,
and
in middle school.
How old is that?
I think it was like 7th grade.
Okay.
It was in 7th grade. So we watched this episode, and I really loved the part with the prosecutor and the defense counsel, and it intrigued me. So I said, I'm going to be a lawyer, right? That's what I want to do.
Did you know right then?
Right then.
It was like bingo.
It was bingo. I mean, it's one of those things that I can't explain it. I just knew that that's like what I saw myself doing, and I knew that I wanted to start off with the criminal world, right? And so that's what it leads into. My first job out of law school was as an assistant state attorney here in Miami-Dade County. So I got to live out my dream as my Law and Order dream from when I was, in 7th grade.
So, and I'm glad you brought up that you worked as a prosecutor. What is that like when you're with some people that the evidence supports that they're bad guys? Because typically the state does not charge them unless they have enough evidence, and then you got to present it to a jury or to a judge. What's that like when you go, this is a bad guy, all right? How am I going to stop him from doing this to other people? So what is that like? Tell me about the passion that you had inside when you did that.
It's a lot of pressure, I left the state attorney's office as an A-level prosecutor. So when you're an A-level prosecutor, you only deal with the most serious cases. So you're talking about your murder cases, attempted murder cases, armed robbery, your first-degree felonies that
You worked on those cases?
Yes, I worked on those cases. So I've done 4 murder cases. I've done 2 first-degree murder cases, murder trials. These are all trials. And the pressure is a lot because in the end of the day, you do have the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's why you're going forward. And you have the situation where if you lose somebody who you believe and you have the evidence to prove did something bad, like kill another person, is going to go free. And almost immediately. But so you don't realize the physical toll it takes on your body and how exhausting it is to go to one of those trials until you finish it. I remember my first degree murder case when the verdict was read and the courtroom was evacuated. I finally sat down because you stand up for the verdicts. I sat down and everything hurt. My back hurt, my legs hurt, my head hurt, everything, because you're so tense for that 2 weeks that you're in trial. It's such a high pressure, high profile type of a situation that whenever you're done with it, you're like, man, like I'm exhausted. So it's very intense, but at the same time, it is a feel good type of job. It's the type of job that you go home at night, win or lose. I didn't care if I got it guilty or not guilty. I knew that I was contributing to the judicial system. I knew that I was contributing to people resolving their problems, and I could go home, lay down in bed and say, I did my job for the community, and hopefully it was a step in the right direction.
So often we hear, well, we know he did it. So I frequently ask, how do you know he did it? Well, somebody told me. Okay, and then you start to see their own internal mechanism going, well, maybe he didn't. So, but when the state takes a case and takes it to trial, they are extremely confident that they have enough evidence and that the guy or gal, lady, did it.
Yeah, well, sometimes we're not very confident. You have the evidence, and sometimes, you have a situation where all your witnesses are not available. right? So that messes around with how, you know, what happens with your case. And it's happened in civil litigation, because now I do civil litigation mainly. So in other words, you have the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person did it at the stage of the filing. You try to go forward whenever your case is in its best condition. So all your witnesses are available. You have all of your physical evidence. The depositions have been done. Discovery is complete, which is basically all the groundwork to get the trial prepped up. And then if it doesn't resolve, because remember, most of these cases, there are in fact plea offers made before it goes to a jury trial. So if the case doesn't resolve, then you have to chance it and bring it in front of a jury and have the people of the community decide whether the person's guilty or not guilty.
Frequently people, point out what the guy did. I said, well, let me ask you, and he got off. I go, have you ever speeding on Palmetto Express? Yeah, all the time. So you did it. Did you get off? Yes. Right?
It happens.
It happens. That's just the way that it works. So this is the first time you've run for judge.
It is.
And there are different levels of judges. One is circuit court. Would you explain the difference between circuit court and county court?
Absolutely. So county court, you have two different sections. You have what's called civil court, which is your money disputes, and that encompasses your small claims. And then you also have criminal court. So in criminal court for county, it's all of your misdemeanor cases. Anything punishable by less than 364 days in jail. So there's a difference between jail and prison, right? So that is
Would you explain the difference?
Sure. So what prison is beyond 365. So beyond 365 days, you go to prison. Below that, you go to county jail. So your county court judges handle small claims, which are your disputes that are below $8,000, and then also any civil cases that are below $50,000, right, for the civil. And then in the criminal aspect, you're dealing with any case that is a misdemeanor. So any punishment that's less than a year in jail. Circuit court, you have a wider range. So you have your civil disputes, which are your money disputes or injunction disputes that are over $50,000. You have criminal cases, which are your felony cases. So only felonies are dealt with in circuit court. And then you also have family, so your divorces, child custody disputes, and dependency court as well as juvenile and probate. So circuit encompasses a lot more different divisions than county court does.
So we frequently hear there are not enough prosecutors, not enough public defenders, and not enough judges. So how many judges are there in county court and how many in circuit?
That is a good question.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would say close to probably in the high 30s for both. Look, Miami-Dade County is a big city with a lot of cases. I remember when I was a state attorney, there was times that I was handling 250 cases by myself, and every 2 weeks I was prepping for 80 jury trials. So there are a lot of cases in Miami-Dade County. That's why you need to have effective and experienced judges to be able to go through these dockets and weed out the cases and go to trial if they need to, or have them resolved.
In today's environment, is there, if you will, forced mediation?
In civil, yes. So civil, it's mandatory mediation. You have to go to mediation. You have to, even if you impasse, which means you don't come to an agreement, you are required under the case management orders to go ahead and do mediation before you go to trial. So a lot of times when we have calendar call, which is when the judge is asking you if you're ready or not ready for trial, they'll inquire as to whether or not you've done mediation. Or you can bring up and say, Judge, I'm sorry, but we haven't been able to schedule mediation because of different scheduling conflicts, and the judge will give you a continuance.
I've been involved in mediation on both sides, and it's really a good time to pause and to say, how much more time do you want to spend on this?
Absolutely.
Because if we go to a third party, we're liable not to get anything what we want, and I get that.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at it and go, how much more money am I going to spend?
That is a consideration.
This, right?
Yeah.
And at today's rates, present company excluded, all right, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Litigating cases is a lot of money, and that's something that I definitely talk to all of my clients about. I explain to them, you have to take your peace of mind into consideration, how much time you want to spend on this case, how much money you want to spend on this case, because mediation is a way of resolving it where both sides are unhappy, but at least you're guaranteed a result. Right? When you go to a jury trial or even a bench trial, which is a trial in front of a judge, the results are never guaranteed. No attorney can sit here and say this is for sure a guaranteed win case. We're actually prohibited from guaranteeing any sort of results to our clients. But with mediation, you do have a guaranteed result if you resolve the matter. But attorney's fees is a big deal. A lot of cases sometimes will have a small amount in dispute, and the attorney's fees is tenfold what the actual dispute is about.
I mentioned earlier about some lawsuits we initiated years ago. It was a lot of money and a lot of time, and so time consuming. An interesting point, while those cases were going on, we had the attorneys on one end of the desk and we had the principals at the other. both trying to figure out how to get more business from a third party, working together on that. I said, is that the way this works? And sometimes you realize it's a tool to wind up at a place where people are a little bit happier. Miami-Dade County is pretty diverse, probably one of the most diverse in the country, certainly in the top 4, 5, or 10. What does that mean for our judicial system and our public defenders and our prosecutors?
Well, I think that having a diverse bench always helps the community's trust. When you go to court, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable even sometimes for the attorneys that are involved in the case. But I think that a lot of the litigants and the public want to see people that look like them, that have the same life experiences as them on the bench, because in the end of the day, that means that you understand. It is very important to read the law, and obviously as the judges, we have to follow the law as written. But in applying the facts to the actual law, you get to sit there and understand people's life experience. If you don't have the exposure to their culture, or you don't have exposure to different life experiences that people have and have been going through, it might be harder for you to understand what it is that they are, why it is that they acted a certain way, or what exactly is happening in both civil and criminal cases.
So frequently judges become involved in community activities. People involved in the drug court, but that's much bigger than that. And we have mental health, issues. We know that a lot of beds have been removed from Baker active folks down here. Supposedly it's being taken care of, but they had to send them out of the county. What can judges do to help make sure that the underserved, the marginalized part of their community has equal access?
Well, in circuit court and in county court, Judge Leifman has instilled in regards to mental health a wonderful program over the last several years. I mean, even when I was a state attorney 11, 12 years ago, where he's trying not only to help people that have mental health, but also find a cure, right? To give them beds and give them the medicine that they need, because otherwise it's a revolving doors. And a lot of times mental health correlates with the drug use because people self-medicate. So it medicates. So if you don't have something that helps and assists people, you'll end up in a situation where they're constantly coming in and out of the judicial system, and that's not good for taxpayers. That's not good for them. That's not good for the court system because it backlogs matters. So really what's important and what Miami-Dade County has been great with doing is actually helping people that have the mental health issues, that have the drug issues, resolve those issues, fight that addiction in regards to drugs, to give them an opportunity to come out of this vicious cycle and do better for themselves.
Nearby, there's a 12-step program, and all the different addictions are there. In lunchtime, it's packed. 4 to 8 o'clock, it's packed. On Monday night, it's the big deal. At least 70 cars are there. I don't know. So every car has a family connected to it. And you look about how prevalent drug abuse and mental illness, how that is together. And Alex Pinellas, former mayor of Miami-Dade County, was one of our speakers once, and he said, when I had the bully pulpit, I didn't know what to do. My brother was schizophrenic, out in the streets, acting out, a whole bunch of problems. Eventually, he died.
Yeah.
And when he was talking about it, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. So here's a guy, aggressive, happens to be an attorney, and open about it, but still, even with that, he was shy.
Yeah.
And we see that has shifted a lot recently. Certainly in the last 10 years, people are, I'm taking a mental health day, or so-and-so, I'm in therapy. And what we were fortunate to be able to do here is take some of the mental health concerns and move it up so it's not always buried in the back.
Yeah.
And so I hope when you get more involved in charitable things that you pick something that's really going to make a big, big difference. So if you had to pick an area to help other people, other than being a judge and being fair, what would it be?
Well, lucky for me, I'm already involved in it.
Okay.
So I'm very passionate about doing work for the Lotus House. Okay. So back before the pandemic, my mom, my sisters, and I kind of did a thing called a Cake for a Smile, which is where we would deliver 5 to 6 cakes every month on the first of the month to the Lotus House so that the kids got to celebrate their birthdays. And Lotus House, if you don't know, is a shelter for women that are experiencing homelessness, so that they have a safe space for themselves along with their children. and also women that are experiencing other difficulties in life. So it's a great location. I also, through the Little Lighthouse Foundation, do what's called Arts and Craft Night there on Thursdays. Not every Thursday, obviously. Campaigning takes a lot of time, but what we would do is that we would go there for about an hour in the evening, take the kids, go into like an arts and craft room, do different types of projects with them, and then the moms get to be in the eating hall, which is right next door to the arts and craft room, and kind of take a break. And as a mother of two, I can appreciate, a little downtime where your child is doing something productive and something that is, enriching your spirits, but at the same time, you're getting a little bit of your mental health break from, having the kids 24/7.
So you knew you wanted to be an attorney when you were very young.
Yes.
When did you start being a philanthropist with your time?
My mom, I think, has always done it. I mean, I'm from Brazil, and in Brazil, she used to do the same sort of things. She used to make, meals and give it to the local homeless shelter. And she's always instilled in us that you have to give back. When we moved from Brazil here to the United States, we first moved to Texas, and we had sold everything that we had. I mean, my entire family's still in Brazil, except it was me, my mom, my dad, and my sisters. And it was the local church that helped us out, with donations.
How old were you?
I was turning 7 years old, turning 7 years old. So I lived in Texas for 2 years. So it was that community environment and that community assistance that helped shape me and continue to feed this desire to help the community on my end, So coming, I don't call myself a philanthropist because I feel like that is such a high bar, and for people that are way better than me at the amount of time that they give and the services that they give. But I do feel like it's important to have somebody that does give back to the community, that's in touch with the community. I do that also through the voluntary bars. I know we were just in Opelika with the Miami-Dade Bar Association redoing the garden for one of the local schools that they have this beautiful garden, but it needed to be weeded and mulch needed to be laid. So there was a group of attorneys that donated our Saturday in April and, did that sort of work. So I love helping. I help as much as I can because I feel like it's important for a judge who is a public servant, right, who works for the public to be involved in the community as well.
And your children, how old are they?
So Lucas is turning 9 in December and Audrey's turning 7 in September.
So for their entire lives, they've been watching you do that.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes, they have. And they
Another
love
generation.
to help. Another generation. They love to help. My son is always talking about how he wants to. He's like, Mom, can we make some spaghetti and drive it around and give it to the homeless people? I'm like, well, baby, there's restrictions and things that we have to do, but we can go somewhere and help out as much as we can. So I'm trying to get them involved. Lucas is getting to an age where I can actually take him places. Like Camilla's house and do more of those things. Audrey's still a little too little for it.
So when people decide on who they're going to vote for, whatever position it is, that frequently some can talk about, if they're state legislators, they can talk about that. But as far as running for judge, you're really not allowed to talk about a whole lot of things.
No, we're very restricted. I am allowed to talk, obviously, about my experience, but we do have some canons that regulate us to what we're allowed to talk about. It is a non-party, like a non-partisan position, which means that there is no party affiliation. We are on the Republicans' August ticket, the Democrats' August ticket, and even the Independent August ticket, right? And we're actually prohibited from disclosing what party we are affiliated with. So we have a lot of restrictions.
So we know that the ballots are going out, right? I think they went out. I think I got mine in the mail.
Yeah, hopefully
right?
you voted. Heloiza Correa,
yeah.
number 312.
No, the 312. There we go. Number 312, folks. So people can they get their ballots.
Yes.
There will be a time where they'll be able to go to the polls early. And then the last day to vote, it used to be, we were old enough to remember, that was the only day.
Yes.
November 5th, I think. So it's important that people go out and express themselves and vote for the candidates that they think that can represent not just themselves, but the community at large.
Absolutely.
Circuit court judges all throughout Miami-Dade County. That means, but you would be your office, if you will, the judge would be from downtown, or do you go rotate to South Dade?
No, so the county court has branch courthouses, which is South Dade, Coral Gables, Caleb Center, North Dade, and Hialeah. Circuit court, you're downtown. So you're either going to see me in the civil courthouse if I'm humble enough, if I'm blessed to actually to win the election. But it would be civil court is downtown, which is 73rd West Flagler, or by the UM and Jackson Hospital off of Northwest 12th Avenue.
more or less, what do you suppose the average number of cases that a judge would have somewhere in getting ready to finish and day one, moving into the system? How many cases might that be?
I know the county court judges in Miami-Dade County currently have about 8,000 cases each. Circuit court judges, I think it's a little bit less than that. It also depends if you're in civil or in criminal.
So the judge has to be able to move that stuff through to keep it flowing.
Absolutely. That's why experience is key, because if you don't have, for instance, jury trial experience, circuit court cases, if you're in criminal, you will only do jury trials. You will do some evidentiary hearings like probation violations, motions to suppress, things of that nature, but those are not considered bench trials per se. And, in civil litigation, same thing. There's a good split between bench trials and jury trials. But if you don't have the experience, for instance, with jury trials, the judge can hesitate, or the litigants can hesitate to go ahead and push that trial forward in front of a judge that maybe doesn't have the jury trial experience because they're afraid that a mistake will be made, which will just cost everybody a lot more money, or in the criminal side, it will cost somebody's time and freedom. So it's, experience is very, very key in these types of elections.
So they're running the business of handling all these cases. And for every case, there's a prosecutor, right? Defense attorney. You have all the witnesses on both sides. So it's a big deal. There could be 10, 15, 20 people involved for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe even more in this case. And the judge runs that whole thing. That's why sometimes when you watch the shows, I don't know how real they are. Come on, let's do this and move on. Sometimes people watch these shows and they think people get to the Supreme Court right after the commercial. But
Very true.
But it takes a long time for that whole process.
It does. The appellate process takes a long time. So even if you do win a case, let's say, for instance, a civil case, you sued a business partner and you ended up getting $1 million because that was the business profit that was supposed to be split with you, for instance. Your partner can then appeal the verdict, right? Whether it's a bench trial or jury trial, depends, but they can appeal the verdict. And that will go up to the Third District Court of Appeals. The Third District Court of Appeals, they actually do move cases relatively quickly, but still, it does take time. And then depending on what type of case it is, for instance, like your death penalty cases, those do go straight to the Florida Supreme Court, and they need to also be reviewed by the Florida Supreme Court. So it takes a while, and we're talking about probably a year to two, depending on what kind of case it is, for these issues to be resolved, unless it's on an emergency writ.
So as a prosecutor, and then on the other side, as far as representing your clients, sometimes it must be tough, where you go, all right, I'm being pulled this direction, I'm being pulled this direction. I need to get home, but I know I got to take care of this guy over here. And with all your duties that you have throughout your life, how do you manage to keep that copacetic so that you can live a fruitful life?
I compartmentalize. So I had to learn early on, especially at the state attorney's office with the amount of cases that we had, that you had to, number one, be very organized, and you had to get to know your cases. So that has allowed me throughout my entire career, the 14 years, a little over 14 years that I've been practicing, to do the same thing with all of my other cases. And I've instilled a system where basically I will respond to my clients. Sometimes my clients are international. They end up sending me text messages or voice messages at 9, 10 o'clock at night. But I also set boundaries. I'm all about spending time with my family, especially my kids. My kids do need to see me. They do need to spend time with me. So, for instance, if I'm in trial, my kids understand that mommy's going to be working very late, and I will try to make it home by the time that they go to bed and give them a kiss and, wake up extra early so I can make them breakfast before I have to leave. But at the same time, it's a balancing act. You just have to be organized, and you have to make sure that you understand and you are prepared for the cases so that the litigants in front of you don't suffer because of your lack of preparedness.
Judges have to be pretty confident because they know one side's going to love it and the other side is going to go, no, I got to find some things that she or he did wrong, so I'm going to go. So what is that like, even as a prosecutor, that somebody's on the other side poking holes in your case? How do you handle that?
I think that in regards to the judge aspect of it, my goal is going to be prepared for every hearing as much as I can, especially your special set hearings, to understand the law, to understand the arguments that counsel are making. And I in this day and age, I think that the litigants and the attorneys just want to know that, number one, you heard them, that you reviewed what they've presented to the court, that you understand the law, and even if you don't rule for them or in their favor, that everyone was treated with respect and that you gave them a reasoning for your ruling. So that's going to be my roadmap as to how it is that I can make sure that everyone, or at least that they understand where it is that I'm coming from and the reason for the rulings that I'm making. And at some point, look, the appeals process is part of our judicial system. No judge is going to have 0 appeals under their belt, but I will try to endeavor to make sure that every ruling that I make is backed by the case law and backed by well thought out, arguments and facts.
So part of the strategy of the other side is, let's appeal it, we'll wear them out.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just part of the gig. And even if you didn't do anything, meaning the judge didn't err on anything, if you can make the other side spend another $50,000 and wait another year, you may win out of, I think the word might be default, where you go, I'm done, I don't want to do that.
Or it forces a settlement. A lot of times people will do the appeal, and while the appeal is pending, the parties will sit there, talk to each other because appellate costs are involved, and they just end up settling the case because they've now gone to a jury or a judge. They understand what the likely result of the case would be. So it helps facilitate negotiations.
And I think the part of this when you're involved in litigation is decide what is it you really want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And as you go along, the attorneys are going to represent their clients. So this ball is rolling. Mm-hmm. And you may go, hey, wait a second. I want this to be over. And I'm willing to make some changes in that. So people have to be able to speak up to their attorneys and say, we need a change.
And attorneys need to make sure they ask their clients, what's your end goal, right? So in the beginning of a case, when I take on a new client, I always ask them, what is it that you want? At the end of the day, if you could have everything that you want, what is it that you would want? And surprisingly enough, sometimes is that they don't want to be dealing with this problem to begin with. So if it's a case that I could, as an attorney, resolve fast, and, I say to my clients, less money in my pocket, more money in yours, whether it's on the defense side or on the plaintiff's side. If we can resolve the case relatively quickly, then it just benefits all of the parties. The higher the attorney's fees are, the harder it is to go ahead and resolve the cases, because that ends up being put into the calculation.
So when you look at it and why people file suits, frequently people are just so personally offended by the other party that's the drive. So even if they were partially responsible for it, they're so hurt. And I'm sure you've seen that before. Okay, it's resolved and both parties are sitting there crying and go, all right. And when we are involved in things, I say to people, listen, the best settlement is one that you're not happy and that I'm not happy. Because if it goes on, we're both going to be really unhappy, and we're going to wind up at some point settling this. It's not going to go through trial because then either side can appeal it. So let's just take care of this. And we do that with people that owe us money all the time, because for us to spend the time and go and go and go and get it tied up in that. So you must have clients at some point that they're looking at you and go, I'm done. All right?
Yeah.
I need to go spend time on something that's going to be a little bit more productive. So we got a couple more minutes left. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and about you. We understand that you learned at a very young age to be able to give, and we knew you wanted to be a lawyer and a judge at a very young age. Your mom did it, you're giving, and your children have learned. So if somebody was going to pick a judge, because most people are going to look at the name, and they're going to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Why should they stay with you?
Experience, reputation, and community involvement. I have more jury trial experience, which again, this is a circuit court seat. Jury trial experience is very important. You want to make sure that the judge that you are arguing in front of and presenting your case knows what it is that they're doing. I've also done all types of different cases. Like I said, I've done first-degree murder cases, drug trafficking cases, child abuse cases, and I've also done civil litigation, which includes probate litigation, $120 million probate dispute. I've done a freedom of, a free speech case pro bono So I've done a wide range of different cases in the civil arena, and currently I do commercial litigation, which is your contract disputes and shareholder business disputes, and construction litigations representing people and companies. I've dedicated my life, and I started my career in public service, and I want to come back and continue giving as a public servant, but in this way as a circuit court judge, so that I can help move the cases along. I can make sure that the people that do appear in front of me understand that their cases are going to be heard, that they themselves are going to be heard. Everyone will be respected in the courtroom, and the rulings will come out in a timely manner and very well thought out and backed up by the case law. Reputation is a lot. I've been blessed to have a lot of donations from the legal community and non-legal community showing their support for my campaign. And to me, it's been absolutely astounding the amount of people. It takes a village to raise children. It takes an entire county, sometimes even a nation, to put you on the bench.
Okay, and people can find out more about you on your website. Why don't you give us that address?
Absolutely. It's Heloiza Correa forjudge.com. So HELOIZA CORREAFORJUDGE. We'll put it on.
Heloiza, thank you very much. Continued
Thank you
success.
for having me.
And lots of good luck to you.
Pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, folks, thank you for joining us. And Alex, thank you for producing the show. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Have a good day, folks.